And so it looks like we may have some pretty huge news for Kamala Harris in the state of Florida. Now, basically, what's happened is, and this has been kind of happening throughout the campaign, where for some reason the Trump campaign is pretty dead set on like alienating every possible group possible, whether it be childless people, grandmas, even to the point where it was like you're even starting to alienate them and saying, oh, they're just sort of vehicles for taking care of children. That's all they're worth. And, obviously Trump at the debate says the thing about, hey, they're eating the cats or eating the dogs. That's obviously not happening, but it's actually leading to some really bad outcomes for the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. There's a Haitian community there, and they're getting death threats, and safety appears to be at risk now because obviously you start to spark hate against a group, and then people start to grow hatred amongst the group. And what's pretty interesting is we're going to kind of see the impact that they potentially can have in the voting populace, and Kamala Harris is trying to make the tent as large as possible. She even mentions Polish Americans, which we're going to talk about in another video as well, because they also seem to be an interesting voting bloc. She's trying to get moderate Republicans as well and other groups. She's trying to expand the tent as much as possible. So let's go ahead and check out this clip. We're going to see, you can see this from New York. You're going to have, a Haitian community leader going off right here, just going off on Donald Trump. You're going to see sort of the anger, the sort of outrage at what he's been saying and the hatred that he's been spewing and causing. So go ahead and check this clip out.
Very disturbed by these comments because J.D. Vance, instead of retracting and apologizing, he's doubling down and changing his story and saying, oh, constituents are calling my office saying that they saw someone eat a dog or cat or ate Garfield. I don't think so. He's lying. I ask the media to reach out to Senator Vance and ask him for the records of his legislative office. We want to see what constituents are actually saying these lies. Reba, who works in my office, we record the phone number and name of every person that calls our office. That's what a legislative office is supposed to do. And so we're going to ask J.D. Vance, show us the proof. That's right. Because there is no proof. You're a liar. You're lying about such good people. That's un-Christian. How dare you? How dare you go to church? You don't deserve to be a senator.
That's right.
And I'm asking Elon Musk. I know you were in space today, but honestly, you act like a space cadet. How dare you double down on these lies and spread these fallacies and spread these lies through Twitter or X or whatever you call it? You're not even American. You're South African. And the allegations are that it was a South African who was taking the goose and the geese, whatever, the duck. So, these statements are completely false. And there's no way they could justify it or verify it. Thank you.
You can just see the really massive anger and outrage at what they're doing in terms of sort of stoking this hate against, this group of Haitians. And, Trump was really going after migrants in general. But you can see the sort of fierceness and the anger and the challenge that he's presenting over this. And so, again, like in terms of voter outcomes and voter actions and things like that, energy and sort of enthusiasm and anger, emotions play a really large role in politics. And so even if you have a group, for example, that already sort of votes in your direction mostly, there's always going to be potential to grow in the terms of voter turnout, and that'll also boost the proportion of total voter populace that is amongst your ethnicity plus whoever you're trying to actually support. And so this is taking place in New York. It's actually the second highest Haitian population. And so what's pretty interesting here is we can see, it says over 300,000 Haitians can vote in Florida. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this number is completely accurate, just to be clear. However, we do have some Haitian population data here. So here we have it says, according to a 2022 census estimate, there were 1,138,855 Haitian Americans living in the United States. The 10 U.S. states with the largest populations of Haitian ancestry in 2022 were 1. Florida, 544,043, which is 2.4% of the state population. New York, which is 167,287 people, 0.8% of the population. 77,054, 1.1%. 70,177 New Jersey, and then we can also see other interesting states as well, because these three states aren't really important, right? Because they're kind of blue already. However, if you take a look at Georgia here, you see Georgia 61,575%. It's almost 1% of the population, looks like so. And then you have here Pennsylvania, Here we have 21,276, and Connecticut 20,000. So the big states here, obviously Pennsylvania being 20,000 votes, Georgia 60,000 votes. The election back in 2020 was actually decided by 12,000 votes in the state of Georgia, and so it's making up looks like 0.5% here of the population. So 61,000 votes could be a big deal in a state like that, honestly, just because simply on the grounds that it's like literally was decided by just 12,000 votes. It's insane how close the election was. It was 0.2%, unfathomable, right? And again, these are the total population, so I don't know what the exact voting populace is, but you can see there's a 544,000 amount of people who live in Florida. This guy's saying the voting age population is 300,000. I don't know if that's true or not, but you would typically want to project somewhere around half or so 250, 270K, somewhere around there probably are the voting populace. So definitely somebody that can make an impact in the state. I don't think it's enough to be able to win the state of Florida, for example. However, I also think that, I think Haitians generally are kind of blue already. They're already blue, so they probably vote blue already. However, the big thing is you can always increase turnout. Turnout is always a big thing, and then also, presumably turnout would go up with, things like this happening where it feels like there's sort of an attack on the Haitian community, and Donald Trump is talking that when you see the sort of anger, outrage, etc., which is totally well deserved and, is very legitimate, that kind of thing can surge voter turnout. So that's a really important thing, and what we can also see is there's this, census data here that I found, I guess, about Haitians in Florida. So it looks like this was made for a census drive in the state of Florida to be able to, count the number of Haitians. So here what we have is the counties where the estimated population distribution of the populace of Haitians. I don't think this is like the whole county, I'm not sure. But it's saying Miami-Dade here, 21% estimated population distribution. Broward, 17%. Palm Beach, 10%. So these are actually counties that, I think Miami-Dade was really the very large one that actually ended up being a large, colossal failure for Joe Biden. So Joe Biden significantly underperformed, but we can see his number of votes in a raw number didn't actually go down. They stayed the same, but voter turnout was higher. So his percentage severely dropped. What you can see is, the GOP, well, his numbers went down by 5,000, but it's not very significant. But for the Republicans, for Trump, is surged by almost 200,000 voters. And so what actually ended up happening in the state was there was this large surge of like plus 14 for Hispanic voters in the state of Florida. And so I think what ended up happening was there was actually a lot of Cuban Americans, I guess, that sat out the 2016 election, but then came out to vote. Because this isn't really much evidence, if at all, of much like conversion happening where it's like, hey, Democrats who voted for Hillary ended up voting for Trump. It mostly seems like, a bunch of other people who sat out and didn't come out to vote voted for Donald Trump. So a big goal of the Kamala Harris campaign should be, how do you get these people not to vote for Trump? They don't even have to come out for you, because you can see a lot better of a proportion here, 65.1 to 34.9. And this is almost, I think, entirely responsible, pretty close to almost entirely responsible for the gap. And we can see even in Broward and these areas, there was a drop as well, but it pales in comparison to these areas. But even in these areas, these could be areas for growth, with the Haitian community. And then, if it's something that the Democrats take seriously, they could run like voter turnout drives, for example. And at this point, Florida, honestly, is going to be pretty tough to win. You'd have to get really, really lucky. God himself would have to come down and kind of zap you to be able to win. But, we could take a look at the Florida polling numbers in general as well. So in general here, what we have here in the aggregate, we have her down 4.1. These numbers seem more stable than a state like Texas. Texas seems more unstable, although I think that's because weird, like random, confusing polls are coming out. But he is up 4.1. So this Redfield poll came out putting Trump up 6. Redfield is a really, really bad pollster. They're D-rated, which is horrible. Morning Consult actually came out with a 2-point poll. So there have been a couple polls actually putting Trump up 2. And a lot of what's going to happen is, how do those Cubans who didn't vote for Trump but also didn't seem to vote for the Democrat, how are those people going to end up voting in the 2020 election? How are those people who, Trump was able to really stem the vote with so massively, that was definitely not a one-to-one comparison, how are those people going to vote? And so if you're Kamala Harris in the state, you definitely want to focus on that. But, this PPP poll had Trump up 3. The Emerson poll had Trump up 4. The Florida Atlantic poll had 2 and 3, but honestly, Florida Atlantic with the other polls that they're putting out in other states, they don't really seem to make sense. So I'm not really trusting that, to be honest. But there have been some polls putting it within 3 and 2. I think this poll was the first one to have a 2, or actually this Florida Atlantic one had it. But this is the first head-to-head poll to have it up 2 for Donald Trump. So, I think that there can be some inroads made, but it's going to be pretty difficult to be able to win the state of Florida at this point. But at this point, you could make inroads, and there may be people who sort of don't already know about Kamala Harris or are not really decided yet that you could kind of pull for. But, if Donald Trump continues to sort of antagonize more and more groups, it kind of potentially would boost your tent. So it'll be interesting to see if Kamala Harris can seize on this, and if like the Haitian community, in another video I'll be talking about the Polish community as well, are able to kind of seize the vote for Kamala Harris. It'll be pretty interesting to see. Definitely let me know your thoughts down below.